Hi, I'm Robin. Talk fast, eat ass. I don't even know why I keep up with that joke. Um, this is I think the seventh video. I'm off script, and I just feel like kind of talking about, I guess, less about how things. I don't know. So I kind of want to talk about how I'm feeling, I guess, about the stuff going on in the war. I'm still living in Lviv with my wife. There was so today is April 20th, 420, blaze it. And there were a couple missiles that hit nearby this past weekend, or I think it was a few days ago now. I think 7 people died. It wasn't anywhere near us. We hear bangs now and again, but like they're not accompanied by any sirens, so we don't really know what they are, and we're just kind of a bit on edge with it. In terms of safety, Lviv is still quite safe. There are like the city, it very much seems just like a tourist city right now, but that's also due to like the influx of refugees from other parts of Ukraine. Kyiv has been liberated, and a good number of people have started moving back, but there is a completely different like tone back there because like the fighting isn't over. They're still burying bodies. They're still looking for people that have gone missing. One of my friends who stayed with me and Kate for a while, he was one of the engineers that stayed with us, Zhenya, actually. He went back to Kyiv and he's working with the military to, I think, do stuff with like UAVs or drones or something, because apparently that's where his expertise is. But yeah, the Russians have pulled out of the entire Kyiv Oblast. They've retreated back. Chernobyl is back under Ukraine's control. If anybody missed that news, they are pulling their soldiers, a lot of their forces, out of Belarus up north, and so there's the general consensus is that they are going to be refocusing a lot of their military, or Russia is going to be refocusing a lot of their military efforts back in fighting and taking well, they already control a good part of like the Donbass area, but pushing in from the Donbass and controlling the land corridor that's currently that's been established now between Russia's Donbass region and Crimea, and along that strip includes my wife's hometown of Berdyansk, where her grandma is still staying. And for now, it doesn't seem like she's willing to evacuate. She currently works. She's a pensioner in her hometown. She works at a hospital, but the pension that she gets isn't enough, and so she's constantly working. And if she leaves, there's not going to be a job for her. Me and my wife have discussed whether or not we'd be like willing to accept that, like, and have her be part of the financial burden for like our family for the foreseeable future. But regardless of that, she's decided that Kate's grandma has decided that she wants to remain in Berdyansk, which is it's understandable, but like frustrating and worrying for us. She's there with her sister, so my wife's grandma's sister, along with 2 cats and a small dog. They're we're no longer able to send them medicated food because the cats have or one of the cats has had a heart condition. So that's where we're at with that. We are worried that there's going to be more fighting along the southern cities, but apparently historically Berdyansk has been a place where there would be, if anybody tried to invade it historically, whoever was occupying or controlling the city would just kind of let it go because apparently it's just too hard to defend for whatever reason. Besides that, Melitopol is still the cities of Melitopol and Kherson in the southwest and Melitopol in the southeast, I think pretty close to Mariupol, are still under Russian control. Um, One of the potential outcomes that it is seeming, I can't say, I'm not going to say likely because I don't think Russia is going to be able to maintain any amount of control within Ukraine after the brunt of this conflict. But it's seeming like part of their goal, if they're not able to fully take Kyiv or a larger part of Ukraine, that they're going to just try to maintain this land border with Crimea, which would be concerning because Kate's grandma is Ukrainian. She's pro-Ukrainian. She really does not want to be a Russian, and she that puts her at risk. So we are worried about that, but yeah. In terms of the war, I mean, they're still looking for bodies. They're still looking for people in Kyiv. Uh, the Lviv refugee situation is still not great. No, nobody's really keeping track of COVID. Nobody's thought about COVID. People aren't wearing masks in most places. My wife is volunteering overnight at a volunteer shelter near us. Time and again, I just try to go to help make camouflage nets and stuff. We're trying to make a camouflage net frame here. I've kind of stepped away from the website that I made. I feel like um, I've definitely taken a step back in doing what I can to help because I just don't feel like the things that I'm doing to help are helping. Um, Plus, I've had like a social block, I guess, when it comes to social media and networking with people that I can't see, I don't know. I like talking to people, but at the same time, I don't like having to. I don't know how to coordinate shit, to be honest. Um, I'm just trying to get resources to people, and I've definitely there have been a lot of like calls to get people out of the country, and I'm staying in the country, so I don't really know too much about how the best ways to get out. Aside from a couple of routes and recommending Telegram channels to people um, to connect with people outside of the country who are doing evacuation cars, evacuation buses. Still haven't been able to buy a car. I haven't been able to buy a gun yet. I made a call to the International Legion if they need me. I'm willing to help out, willing to help fight, but I think for me, it's right now more the training I'm interested in, just in case the fight does have to come to Lviv for whatever reason. Um, but I also don't have any military experience. I have fighting experience, but not like with guns and being shot at. My eyesight's not that great. But I mean, I'm young and pretty healthy, so. Um, we are living a pretty normal-ish life. I'm still able to cook stuff, and so we're able to eat pretty nicely. Um, the prices of food are still kind of expensive for like essentials like oats and stuff. The Ukrainian hryvnia relative to the dollar is quite inflated, um, and apparently one of the bigger concerns for Ukraine long term right now is that the Ukrainian economy has shrunk at least 40-ish% since the beginning of the invasion. Whereas Russia, they're still more or less operating as usual. Granted, with more protests, and there's a growing sentiment of things things aren't as they should be. The They've started drafting more people. I think there's been legislation to increase the age range for people who are going to be drafted into the military, um, to throw at Ukraine, essentially. Um, Reports are constantly coming out of like people of Russian soldiers who were captured who had no idea where they were going or what they were doing. Uh, so on the one hand, that like would indicate that the Russian leadership is more to blame. But on the other hand, Russian leadership isn't telling them to rape and murder and steal dishwashers uh, and laundry machines and jewelry and a lot of these civilian things. They apparently a Russian soldier, was shot, and when they checked out his armor plates, when they were taking his vest off, they checked inside one of the armor plates. It was an iPad that the guy had fucking stolen from somebody's house. So, I mean, these soldiers are absolutely no angels. They are they're 100% criminals and should be held accountable for every single thing that they've done and are doing. If they aren't actively surrendering or disregarding their orders to attack civilians, if they aren't killing their own leadership, then they are also culpable, and that's just the situation that we are in right now. There's a lot of the discussion going around about like, are all Russians to blame for this? Russians abroad, Russians in Russia, and to a degree, yes, all Russians are held culpable for, or should be held responsible for their government, for the actions of their leadership, because in theory they quote unquote voted. I don't imagine it's a real vote because it is also an authoritarian government. But you know, it's the same way as in the U.S. If as an American you don't do what you can to get the right people in power and dismantle things that are actively doing evil in the world, you are partly responsible for that, and that's just something you need to accept and you need to come to terms with. I'm not saying you need to run. Everybody needs to run for office. I'm not saying everybody should try to set the Capitol on fire or try to, assassinate a political leader. But we are definitely at a time at a point in history where most people don't trust their governments. The people that really do trust their governments are in oftentimes getting pulled. They're in places where they have authoritarian governments, and so we're also dealing with like the death of expertise. People feel like everybody's with the amount of discourse that every voice is equal, and they're not. There are people that are actual experts. There are people that are experts but are also paid to spout bullshit. And but I think by and large the majority of experts are trying to do their jobs, trying to do what is right, because these people, most people, I think, want to do good in the world. Not everybody. I mean, the sway of money is very powerful, but I don't know. The war is weird. It's very weird. Everybody's kind of looking at it in the context of World War III, because this is the largest conflict that has kind of gotten an international. One of the largest militaries in the world is having an open conflict, invading another country, another sovereign country, a neighbor country, for trying to extend its relationship with other countries. So form alliances as an independent nation, as independent nations are allowed to. And this is involved the internet the by and large the international community is behind Ukraine on this, but behind it's very much by all of the trade bodies, all of the alliances. It's very symbolic. And I think this is the thing that frustrates me the most, because you know, we as as Americans spend, I don't even know what percentage of our annual GDP or our annual budget on the fucking military. But doing what with the military? Intelligence, that's important. Research and development, I guess it's important. Maintaining equipment, that's important. Um, but for what? Like, what is what does America want to happen? We are very much in a similar World War I, World War II situation, where unless America gets attacked, or there's some like conspiracy to get Mexico to join and attack the U.S. doesn't feel one the U.S. First of all, the U.S. is so unbelievably disjointed in its faith in anything. They don't. Americans, we don't believe in the government. We don't believe in our police. We don't. believing in our military is like, I don't even know what that means anymore. If anybody were to attack the U.S., I don't believe that the states would stick together behind anything. Um, this is one of the things that's been really bright, I guess, about Ukraine. Seeing people like united against the invaders. Um, Kharkiv and Odessa are two cities that were historically some of the most Russian friendly, Russian speaking cities in Ukraine. Nobody believed, none of them would have believed that Russia would invade Ukraine. But after that, after the invasion, everybody is on the same page. The only good Russian is a dead Russian. And the US, I don't believe we have any sort of unity. The international community, I really don't know what the international community, particularly Europe, is united behind. The Europe has united, has symbolically united behind the ideas of the concepts of freedom, of democracy, independence, the right to like build your fortunes. And when it comes down to it, it very much seems like it is mostly about the economics behind things. Um, and the principles that we had learned growing up, um, the the things we had like learned to be proud of, like World War II, we helped get rid of the Nazis. Um, the World War One, we I don't even know what we fucking did in World War One. But we don't have a consensus on like anything anymore. There's no collective shame. Not everybody's on the same page about the Vietnam War. Not everybody's on the same page uh, about whether or not Joe Biden is actually the president. Because there's already there's a big percentage of people that believe Trump won the election and still have not let that go. There's no consensus about whether or not people should die from a fucking disease that's killed almost. I think we're almost. I think we passed 1 million. Let me see. We're at 988,000 deaths, 80.6 million total cases of COVID. There's never been any sort of consensus around it. And I know France, they've got a big election coming up, and they've also lifted their mask mandate. So I'm still on COVID because it's just something that people are getting lax about again around summer again because they're fucking sick of wearing the masks. Wear a fucking mask. I need to lower this. The volume's too high. Um, I'm incredibly disillusioned. Um, I think it's because I'm somebody who's hopeful about the future with technology, with education. I'm hopeful that we that my generation and the generations after mine are learning from mistakes. Um, I saw a post today. I thought it was kind of funny that like Moana, Coco, a bunch of other like TV shows and stuff are inventing a genre of parents apologizing to their kids, because that's just not something that's happened, I guess, before. People are like our generation, my generation is getting therapy. We're coming to terms with the fact that the mythos or the myth of go to college, get a good job, like that doesn't exist. You that's just not how things work anymore. Um, like it's good that people are inventing new technologies and solutions to the same problems that have existed forever. I'm into blockchain stuff. I think it's great ideas, great concepts, and there are excellent minds that are working on making solutions that aren't just about building up arbitrary finance that will be controlled by governments that are going to cede it only to their friends, their buddies. It's decentralization is something that I think is important. But at the same time, Russia is getting around sanctions also by exchanging cryptocurrency on channels that nobody can actually like stop that. But that's just one facet of blockchain stuff. I think a thing I'm worried about. So if I were to say what I kind of want from the international community in terms of helping Ukraine is to close the skies. Um, NATO has been formally officially requested by Ukraine to uh, to to uphold a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Um, and as an independent nation, Ukraine should have the right to do that. Um, and shooting down a Russian plane is just it's something that should be fine. Unfortunately, I posted about this yesterday. We are negotiating with a psychopath where we're all at a table, um, trying to grab whatever scraps we can. And one of the people at the table is a psychopath wearing a suicide vest. And this psychopath is making demands out of the international community while holding a gun at one of the people at the table, firing at them constantly. And while that person is just trying to block, trying to avoid getting shot, everybody else is just handing him pillows, providing catering, sending him money, telling that the one country with the suicide vest on like, oh, we're not going to let you have any of this food. We're not gonna give you any of our luxury goods. You're not gonna be able to bank with us. Meanwhile, he's still holding a gun, yelling at the person, yelling at Ukraine um, to stop existing. Essentially, the psychopath is saying, "You don't exist. You are my slave." And the other people at the table are just doing what they can, hoping that the psycho doesn't detonate himself along with everybody else. Of course, this translates to nukes. Um, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. There's tactical nukes and strategic nukes, and they're different, and I can't remember which one's which. But they could be used, and they could destroy and ravage a lot of Ukraine. They could destroy and ravage a lot of the rest of the world. But regardless, the people who are in charge and using this nuclear threat to hold the entire world and especially Ukraine hostage, that leadership has no business existing. Vladimir Putin, everybody, every single one of his oligarchs, his inner circle, his proxies, they need to not exist. They deserve to be in prison or put to death. I'm merciful in that way. But the question is, I guess, after that, then, assuming that happens, and that's already a big question. I highly doubt that Putin would ever give away any of his power. How long until the next conflict? What are the steps that need to be put in place to ensure that Russia can never do this again? And it's hard to say what that might be. You can't force people to learn the truth. You can't force people to believe anything. Russia still functions under the Soviet mentality of we are the greatest country, or at least we would be if not for the U.S. and the U.S. specifically holding us back. Meanwhile, They don't let gays exist. You can be put in prison. You can be put in prison for having religious beliefs, or having religious beliefs that offend another person's religious beliefs. That's a thing that you can be legitimately just put in prison for. Domestic abuse cases, like you can't get any sort of actual you can't have a fair trial in that. Police won't hear you. The evidence the burden of proof is unbelievably high. It's virtually impossible to get any sort of solution when it comes to domestic abuse cases and shit like that. They still also believe that they are the heroes of World War II. Again, despite the fact that they helped start it, literally with the Nazis. Again, I believe it's called the Malenkov-Ribbentrop Pact. Non-aggression pact essentially led to the fall of Poland. I think also in terms of like extra worries that everybody has, again, arguing at the table about how much help or what help they can give. There is also the concern of like what's going to happen with China. Is China going to then have like, if they let Russia get away with this, Russia or China can essentially do the exact same thing with Taiwan. They can do a special military operation to invade Taiwan. I mean, Hong Kong essentially pretty much fell already. But what is going to happen if the international community intervenes? Again, with the large consensus of the international community that the international community should, or that Russia is the aggressor and Russia should be held accountable for everything that's happening. China might still throw their themselves into the conflict on behalf of Russia, and if not directly militarily, at least financially. It's essentially the same thing with like Russia and North Korea, or China and North Korea, or Russia and Chechnya, or Russia and Belarus. They'll prop up bullshit proxy dictator governments so long as there's a guy above them that's saying it's okay. And this little alliance doesn't have to listen to anything that happens from the international community at large, or any international law. It kind of becomes a free for all. But at the same time, China, they've got their own shit to worry about. The latest strain of Omicron that's come out in Shanghai has shut down the city. Beijing and I believe Shenzhen are also completely shut down. Most of the places are back in quarantine. They've got an election coming up and they're worried about their economy. What's going to happen, especially given that they're purchasing Russian oil at extreme discounts, but at the same time, this carries its trade consequences with the international community. India also supports Russia, or they've technically sent a little bit of humanitarian aid, tiny amounts, but they are Narendra Modi, the president of India, is beholden to Putin due to Russia supplying arms to India in against like Pakistan. And incidentally, Pakistan's also receiving arms from Russia too. So I don't know what you think about that, India, but there is international consensus that what is going on is wrong, but zero like unitedness behind Ukraine. And I think a lot of that has to do with this like first world, third world mentality. Even though they're white, they're also not, they haven't contributed to the world culture and world stuff in the same way that France has or Italy has, or and by that that means Ukraine hasn't been a colonizer, a systemic colonizer. Ukraine has fought for pretty much all of its recorded history to maintain their own land. It's been fought over by literally everybody in Europe and parts of Asia. Um, Russia believes that Ukraine does not exist, that it's really just part of like the Russian Empire, despite the fact that, technically Russians uh, were born from the Kievan Rus. Um, so you figure that out. Um, yeah, these notions of justice that we were taught in the U.S. Either through religion or through just like school, like have some moral principles. What does it mean to defend or fight for any of those principles when an entire nation, an independent sovereign nation, that has been attacked before? Well, this many people will say this war has started, was started in 2014. This war has actually been going on for 8 years. Uh, I'd say Ukraine got on most people's maps following the annexation of Crimea. People are just learning about Donbass, but Donbass that happened in 2014, where it was taken by Russians, it was taken over, and they've been murdering people and shooting at innocent civilians since 2014. And the U.S. and Europe, they're leveraging the weapons of financial pressure, of financial leverage, to in hopes of dissuading Russia from continuing the invasion. But like, what kind of enforcement happens after that? Nobody. If you want to hold war crime tribunals, if you were to if you were to call Putin to be held accountable, who's going to enforce that? Who's going to go into Russia and arrest Putin? Who's going to go into Russia and call every single one of those soldiers that raped, murdered, and stole things from Ukraine and hold them accountable? Is that going to happen? The country, there is no accountability structure on the international scale. The only reason people are hoping for the World War II ending. Um, the bad guys' allies surrender, or their leaders are lynched, um, or they commit suicide, and then the international community goes in, rebuilds, puts in restrictions, but then make sure that there is a network for the make sure that there is like room for them to rejoin the international community and be part of it. What do we want to happen with Russia? Pretty much any Ukrainian you'll ask, they want Russia to not exist. But what does that mean? Does it mean that they don't want, like, they want to nuke the entire continent, or that they want to nuke the Eurasian continent? No, they don't. They just don't want the government. They don't want the culture. They don't want the lies to exist anymore. Um, they don't want people. They don't want this to continue. They don't want it to repeat. And I don't know how feasible that is, unfortunately, because short of one, NATO and the US actually deciding to put up a no-fly zone or actually send troops to reinforce the Ukrainian military, um, what still would need to happen is that there needs to be, like, the fight needs to be brought to Russia. Not do the things that they are doing in Ukraine, but set out to bring down that government. The government cannot exist. The people that are in power and have been in power since the fall of the Soviet Union cannot remain in power. That government cannot exist. Um, like, we've tried to get away from regime change, um, in like the Middle East. We pulled out of Afghanistan just last year after fighting there for I think 2 decades, almost three. And what did we get out of it? Like, but in terms of necessary regime change, when it comes to like this fascism, like Putin is the end of the spectrum. He is the insane person declaring war on the world or threatening war with the entire world, um, because of like an ideological misalignment with reality. He believes that Ukraine does not exist. He believes that everything should be just Russia. Um, and the people that continue to support him, that believe in the Russian narrative, like, you have people have access to VPNs, and there's still like a 70%, 80% approval rate of Putin. Um, it's sad. It's very sad. Um, I want the US and NATO to help Ukraine. I want them to send troops, or at the very least, do the no-fly zone. If Russia escalates, uh, I also can't be making these decisions just because, like, people's lives, not just my, not including my own, honestly speaking, are at risk. Lots of people, actually, it could be, but I don't know. A lot of people's lives are at risk, um, and we've up to this point moved so unbelievably incrementally. We've moved so unbelievably incrementally to get to where we are, that it frightens everyone to try to take this big step to fundamentally change the world order again. Um, we like stability. Investors like stability. It's how money grows. It's how economies grow. But at the same time, like, who's to say who should make that sacrifice? Like, I've got friends in like the military and the Navy in the US who are saying they're hoping that a Russian missile accidentally hits Poland, or they shut down a power plant in Ukraine, so that they can get so that it can fuck over like hospitals in Poland, so that gives grounds for NATO to act and for the US to act. Why it's terrible that we need to wait for this. We need to wait for more people to get hurt before we can do something, because I don't know what the laws are. Why we want to go high when Russia is sinking to the absolute lowest depths of like what is should be acceptable. We're trying to maintain like international law, uh, international peace, but like international peace is compromised. Refugees are flooding into every country. People are getting sick of having refugees stay at their place, and most economies, they can accept uh, they can't accept refugees and work for work and housing, but they don't want to because it doesn't work for their money. It doesn't line their pockets the same way as slaves in those countries. But I don't know. I talked with my wife and my therapist about this. I don't feel the same rage. I'm not Ukrainian. Um, I don't want it just blood. I want the beliefs that I've held about good guys winning and there being justice for people who are wronged. I want that to mean something. and it's been over a month. It's been almost 2 months now, and uh, Ukrainian soldiers continue to die. Ukrainian civilians continue to die. Uh, Ukrainian cities continue to get leveled. Uh, we still get air sirens almost daily. Um, we're worried for family. It's very consuming. Like, I think the biggest thing for me right now is like, it's really calling into question what is worth believing in. Um, what is worth trying to preserve. People talk about culture, infrastructure, jobs, but I mean, I think justice is something beyond culture. As humans, as intelligent beings, we desire justice. Um, and that's something that we are in extreme uh, we are in extreme deprivation from. Yeah. I go walk my dog. Slava Ukraini.